Hello, all, and welcome again for the keynote talk of the day by Professor K.P. Jayasankar. He's a professor of school in media and cultural studies, TIS. He's involved in media production, research, and teaching. His documentary films, jointly directed by Professor Anjali Monteiro, have been shown in festivals across the world and have won 33 national and international awards. He writes in the broad areas of censorship, documentary film, and media and cultural studies, and his most recent publication, co-authored with Anjali Monteiro, is A Fly in the Curry, independent documentary film in India, Sage to 2016, which has won a special mention for the Best Book on Cinema in the National Film Award 2016. An edited volume, Monteiro, Jayasankar and Rai, DigiNaka, Subaltern Politics and Digital Media in Post-Capitalist India, Orient Black Swan, is in the press. Over to you, sir.
Sorry. So let me begin by thanking the organizers, particularly Dr. Rath, for this opportunity to share our work. And this work is the part of is based on the kind of work that we've been doing with our students of media and culture studies at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And when I say we, it's not a regal affectation. It's actually, it is done with my colleague, Professor Anjali Monteiro. So we've kind of been working on it. And this is the archives that I'm going to talk about is a result of the kind of teaching initiative that we've been doing with our students at TIS. And of course, the site of all this work is Mumbai or Bombay, arguably one of the most interesting cities in the country or probably in the world, which has a lot of interesting energy. So, and we are great votaries of the city, and we've been working documenting the city. So most of you are familiar with the city of Mumbai, but just to kind of contextualize it, Bombay was, or Bombay as I would like to call it because that's how I always called it, Bombay or Mumbai was a set of islands that was given away by the Portuguese to the British as dowry. And the British realized the importance of the city and then kind of developed it as a mercantile center to kind of aid their capitalist or imperialist kind of designs. So, but what's also interesting about the city is that it's a seat of the textile industry and the beginning of the working class movement in India. So when the British kind of established this as a textile center, one of the concerns that they had to kind of invite or kind of encourage people from the hinterland to kind of migrate to the city and to contribute to the labor. So in fact, as opposed to the Portuguese, who had a very different kind of attitude towards religion, and because they came to India at the time of Inquisition, the British kind of made sure that it is a quote-unquote secular multicultural space where you could practice whatever religion. So it, within its DNA has some kind of multicultural kind of intent, multicultural energies. So that's something that we kind of draw upon in some sense. But if you were to look at the kind of recent, I'm talking about from the late 80s to the 90s and to today, it has become, there is this whole idea of a shining new city, which kind of begins to, it doesn't have any place for migrants, it doesn't have a place for the marginalized. In fact, 70% or 60 to 70% of the city's population actually live in what is called slums, quote, which is a misnomer. It's actually informal housing, and they occupy about 8% of the land of the city. Imagine 60% living in 8%. And so it's very iniquitous at the moment. And also the textile industry is completely wiped out. So what we are trying to do is to kind of create a set of films around this idea of erasures and expulsions. And the umbrella website is called, I'll come back to it in a while, DiverCity with a C, .tiss.edu. So it's a part of the organization, or the institution that I work in. So this is kind of to kind of remember, explore, and evoke kind of alternative ideas of the city, because when you say Bombay, it's kind of very shining, Bollywood, these are all the ideas that comes to your mind, but it is a city which is the seat of the working class, as I said. It's a city which has a lot of commitment to multiculturalism, a lot of energies other than that, and also manufacturing. So that's, I mean, we are using this occasion to kind of look at other experiences and imaginations of the city. So one of the archives that I'm going to talk about out of this DiverCity, which is a family of websites, is called mumbairiots.tiss.edu, looking at the Mumbai riots, which happened in '92. I'll come back to in a minute, and that's using it as a case study, and the processes and I mean the kind of ideas that concerns that went behind this. So this is the landing page of the DiverCity website, family of websites, and you will see there are about 6 or 7 sub-sites there. So from here you can navigate into other. The address, as I said, is diversity.tis.edu. I'll come back to it again. What is the context of this? As you know, after the demolition of the Babri Masjids in 1992, December, there has been violence all across the country. And Bombay also witnessed a lot of violence, which kind of went on from 92 December to almost end of Feb, where there was a serious series of bomb blasts which kind of put an end to the ethnic violence and rioting. And 900 people actually lost their lives in this, and several people were forced to kind of were displaced by this process. And the complicity of, at that moment, of the right-wing party, which is now in power, which has been in power for many, many years now, in this violence is kind of well known. And in fact, there was a commission that was instituted called Sri Krishna Commission, which clearly indicted the party, but nothing much has been done. So after 20 years of this event, there was an attempt, because this was a watershed event in the history of the city. It has completely changed the city. It kind of led to various processes, which we'll come back to. But to remember it, there was this campaign called Bombay Ki Kahani and Mumbai Ki Zubani, which was kind of a loose coalition of people who were interested, intellectuals, academics, artists, poets, and a whole lot of people kind of came together and said it's important to kind of remember this event so that, you kind of some way kind of try to recover these utopian energies that inform the city. Sorry. So before I went to this, I'll just want to show you a little. This is a film we made as part of this campaign. It's called Faruq versus the State. It kind of looks at one particular instance of denial of justice after the riots. It also gives you a sense of what actually transpired, and it's also an interview with the Sri Krishna Commission, Justice Sri Krishna himself. Oh, sorry. It's about 10 minutes extra for the film.
10 जनवरी 1993 को 12:30 बजे जब हम लोग नमाज के लिए आए थे और वज़ू करने के बाद कुछ देर के बाद पुलिस मस्जिद में दाखिल होती है। तो जिस तरह इस गेट से जो मैं बैठा हूँ, इस गेट से वो अंदर घुसती है और फायरिंग करना चालू करती है। तो इत्तेफाक से ऐसा हुआ कि एक जो था, हमने सब दरवाजे अंदर के बंद कर दिए और एक जो खिड़की खुली थी वो खिड़की की तरफ मैं बैठा था और अचानक देखा मैंने कि निखिल कापसे का एक ग्रुप था, जो पुलिस जो अंदर आई थी उसमें निखिल कापसे थे और उन्होंने फायरिंग करना चालू किया। उसके अंदर 6 लोग मारे गए और 7-8 लोग जख्मी हो गए, जिसमें हम मेरे को भी गोली लगी थी और वो मैं जख्मी हो गया था उसमें।
In the Hari Masjid case, the evidence did suggest, prima facie, that the police had opened fire on an innocent, unsuspecting group of namazis inside the masjid by blocking out all entrances, and that it was somewhat of a inhuman incident. The evidence did suggest that a particular officer by name Nikhil Kapse, I think, who was the inspector of the police station concerned, was prima facie guilty of all this atrocity and recommended that action should be taken against him. Once the recommendation is made by the commission's job is over. Thereafter, it is for the state government and the machinery of criminal courts to deal with the issue.
पुलिस वाले ने वो जो मॉब रास्ते पे था उनको मतलब इशारा किया कि आप लोग जाओ, और मैंने सोचा कि अभी सब शांत हो जाएगा, ये जंक्शन पे आगे खड़े रह जाएंगे। लेकिन इंस्टेड क्या किया उन्होंने कि रॉन्ग साइड लेके हरी मस्जिद की तरफ आए और बाद में फायरिंग की आवाज़ आने लग गई।
तो हर जगह जिसको जिस तरह जगह मिली वो उस तरह जाकर वहाँ पर अपनी जान बचा रहा था। लेकिन उसके बावजूद हम लोगों ने एक जो खिड़की खुली थी जहाँ पर मैं उसके करीब बैठा था, तो मेरे बाजू में एक लड़का बैठा था, उसके बदन में गोली लगी थी और जब गोली लगी थी वो तड़प रहा था, तो मैंने उसको बाजू में किया और जब जैसा मैंने उसको बाजू में किया तो एक गोली आके मेरे को लगी। एक साइड से एक शमशुद्दीन नाम का लड़का जो था वो जब वहाँ से सामने से आ रहा था तो उसके पैर में गोली लगी थी, इंस्पेक्टर ने मारा था। तो जब उसको मारने के बाद जैसा वो करीब आया तो इंस्पेक्टर निखिल कापसे ने उसकी छाती में गोली मारा और वो वहीं पर ख़त्म हो गया।
लेकिन जब जैसे ही मैं फैक्ट्री में से बाहर निकला तो सामने से एक लड़का इंजर्ड होते, उसको इधर बुलेट लगी थी सामने पेट के नीचे, वो एकदम वैसा गिरते गिरते आया। तो मैंने क्या किया, उसको ले लिया ऐसा और उसको लेके आके और वही फैक्ट्री में रिटर्न आ गया मैं। उधर एक कॉट थी, उस पर उसको मैंने लिटा दिया। इतने पीछे से इंस्पेक्टर काप से आया, निखिल काप से। तो मैं बोला, मैं मराठीमध्ये बोललो, साहेब याला गोळी लागली आहे। त्यांनी शिवी गाड़ी द्यायला सुरुवात केली, एकदम जोर जोर से गाली देने लग गया। तुम लांडिया लोग को बहुत चर्बी है, तुम्हाला धड़ा सिखावला पाहिजे, तुम्हारे को सबक सिखाना मांगता है। तो आई वॉज स्टन्ड, एकदम शॉक्ड हो गया। मैंने ऐसा सोचा नहीं था कि गवर्नमेंट सर्वेंट ऐसा बात करेगा। तो उसने अपना ऐसा रिवॉल्वर निकाला और ऐसा सर के टेम्पल के उसमें रख दिया एकदम। उसने बुलेट फायर करने के टाइम पे क्या हो गया, अल्लाह की मेहरबानी की उसने हाथ ऐसा नीचे कर दिया तो बुलेट मेरे लेफ्ट इधर थाई में आ गई। तो फिर बाद में उसने फिर, और वो लड़का था उसके बाजू में, उसको भी एक और गोली मार दिया।
काफ़ी देर के बाद फिर एक पुलिस की वैन आई जिसके अंदर हम लोगों को 15 या 20 लोगों को उस वैन में भरकर आरे किड़वाई मार पुलिस स्टेशन में लेकर गए। तो वहाँ पर शिवसेना का पूरा मॉब था और वो ये कह रहे थे जिसको चाहिए पाकिस्तान उसको भेजो कब्रिस्तान, ये नारे लगा रहे थे। लेकिन पुलिस ने वहाँ पर कोई कार्रवाई नहीं की। उसके बाद में 25 तारीख को मेरी बेल हुई, जिसके ऊपर मेरे पास 302, 307, 144, 148, 149 और हथियार 8-9 कलम हम पर लगाए गए। और उसके बाद मैं 27 को मेरे को 25 जनवरी को मेरे को बेल हुई। 27 जनवरी को मैंने ब्लू क्रॉस नर्सिंग होम में मैंने अपना बुलेट निकाला।
The commission has categorically found that the police and the state machinery was biased towards the Shiv Sena at that time. There was large canvassing by the Shiv Sena political activists, which influenced the police people, the constabulary, particularly at the lower levels. And so much material was produced where the police were openly indulging in acts of violence in favor and deliberately closing their eyes to acts of violence by the other side, namely the Muslims. And the commission did say that so many of the police officers were identified as actual miscreants.
श्री कृष्णा कमीशन में तो एकदम मतलब वो उधर थोड़ा हम लोग को उम्मीद थी कि श्री कृष्णा कमीशन से हमको कुछ इंसाफ मिलेगा, तो वो तो फिर बाद में जो भी गवर्नमेंट आई उसके बाद उन्होंने वो तो श्री कृष्णा कमीशन को रिपोर्ट को ही डस्टबिन में डाल दिया.
मुझे इंसाफ मिले या न मिले, लेकिन मैं लड़ने की कोशिश करूँगा, मैं लड़ते रहूँगा. और वो वक्त ही बताएगा, क्योंकि आज नहीं कल लोगों को इंसाफ करने की.
So that case was you get a sense of what transpired and the denial of justice. And Faruq, who was a security guard, is still fighting for this case, and he's a kind of most visible face of this resistance to the amnesia. So as part of this project, we decided to, as a school, wanted to participate in this process. So we kind of discussed this with our own class of the students of Media and Culture Studies. They are about 25. And we asked them whether we can make a series of films for them. And Anjali and I teach a course called Working with Video, where they're first taught to kind of deal with a documentary. And documentary is an important side because it involves research, it involves working with the communities, it involves going out, and also kind of actualizes all the learning that they do as part of this program. So as part of this course, every year we do one theme, and the whole class is divided into 4 or 5 groups, and they work on a particular theme based on their own choice. So in this case, we asked the student whether they want to work on this theme. They unanimously said yes, but as teachers, we were very apprehensive about it, for various reasons. One is that most of these students in 2012, they were infants when this happened. It was in 92, 93, and they had not much lived-in experience or understanding of the situation. And many of the students actually are from outside the city, and they have no familiarity with the city, which is, to do a film based on the city is difficult. Thirdly, they were making their first documentary film, and how do they kind of entrust with them the idea of dealing with such a complex set of themes? And fourthly, of course, which most of you know, they had to get a grade for it, and there was a timeline. So we told them, "Are you sure about this?" They said, "Yes, we want to work on this." So that's so after this, we had long discussions with the class about what transpired, and we brought in activists, other resource people who kind of familiar with the issue. They did their own field work, and the end product was 6 films, which was widely disseminated in the city as part of the campaign. 6 films. They made 5 films, and we were, as teachers, also inspired to work with them. And the film that the excerpt that saw is part of the work that the two of us did on a theme which they had not handled, which is denial of justice. And of course, the entire thematic of this film is to kind of remember, kind of resist the amnesia against this, which is kind of changed the city. So they went to many colleges, other community settings. For example, this is one of the Q&A sessions where they actually took questions, and they found it a very enriching and interesting experience. And I'll tell you, so what are the learnings or outcomes? For example, many of them realize, since Bombay is touted as this multicultural melting pot with, but they realize what are the kind of fault lines that kind of existed within the city, what are the divisions that is happening. And also they felt very, very, it was heartening for them to realize that they're making a contribution to the city's ethos, they're making a contribution to this important campaign. But during this period, which is an amazing thing that has happened, is that 3 of these films were telecast by NDTV at prime time in the evening. So, which is, of course, brought a lot of visibility to the camp, and realized how heartening for us to know that 3 student films are actually being shown by television, and these are their first films. It was really, and also if you know the history of Indian television or the kind of context of Indian television, there are a few hundred channels, but none of them actually show documentaries. And forget about documentaries that are so political, so nobody touches it. But it was very, very interesting to see that these films made its way into television. I'm going to just play a clip from one of the films. One of the things that has happened in the city is that the whole map of the city changed after this. So I'm going to play a clip called Changing Maps. It's about a teacher who works with young children in looking at, she's a Muslim teacher, she had to relocate. So you see her history. And she kind of also reflecting on the whole process of partition as well, where her parents were kind of relocated, right? So it's a very interesting. I don't have the time to show the full film, but it's on the, but here is a clip from the film. Technology always fails.
As my parents were working, so my grandmother used to stay with me, and she used to, tell a lot of things about her childhood days. There were 3 sisters, and after the partition, one sister was migrated to Bangladesh, one sister migrated to Pakistan, and she was in India. And she still remembers every time she used to recollect her childhood days. And vaguely I remember my grandmother's sister came from Pakistan. I was in class 6th that time. And the way she was excited to meet her sister, the way she started collecting things, that I'll give this to her, I'll give that to her. उनका वीज़ा सिर्फ बॉम्बे का वीज़ा था और उनका जो घर है वो बिहार में था. तो यहाँ पर आकर भी वो अपने घर नहीं जा पाई. मेरे ग्रैंडमदर, मेरी दादी की जब बहन के हस्बैंड ने तय किया कि हम बांग्लादेश जाएंगे या हम पाकिस्तान जाएंगे, तो वो नहीं जाना चाहती थी, मगर फिर भी उनको जाना पड़ा, अपना वतन छोड़कर जाना पड़ा. और कैसे 3 बहनें थी, तीनों बहनों का पूरा बचपन टूट गया, पूरा बचपन यहीं पर रह गया. तो इस तरह से कुछ हुआ. और मेरी बुक में भी मैंने ऐसे कुछ स्टोरीज, कुछ इंसिडेंट्स डाले हैं जो कोई नहीं जाना चाहता है, छोड़कर नहीं जाना चाहता है, मगर हालात ऐसे हो जाते हैं कि उनको जाना पड़ता है. राइट्स के बाद जब हमने भी घर छोड़ा, मलाड का घर छोड़कर हम जोगेश्वरी आ गए, तो ये सब चीज़ें जो है मैंने अपनी बुक में भी डाला है। बॉम्बे राइट्स हुए थे और जो पार्टीशन हुआ था, उन दोनों को मैंने एक कड़ी में जोड़ा है। पार्टीशन बहुत बड़े पैमाने में था, जहाँ पूरा इंडिया, पूरे भारत को वहाँ पर फ़र्क पड़ा था। और बॉम्बे राइट्स, जो हम बॉम्बे के लोग थे, मुंबई के लोग थे, हम लोगों को ही हमारी ज़िंदगी इधर उधर हो गई। उस वक्त मुझे लगा कि हाँ, मैं एक भारतीय नहीं हूँ, मैं एक इंडियन नहीं हूँ, बल्कि मैं एक मुसलमान हूँ। आई एम अ मुस्लिम। Suddenly some people they turned hostile and I wanted to highlight this. मैं चाहती थी लोगों को पता चले। आज का दिन क्या है? 15th August. हाँ, 15th August is Independence Day. What do you mean by independence? If I ask independence का मतलब क्या है? आज़ादी, ठीक है। तुमको क्या लगता है, फ्रीडम है? तुम लोग को है फ्रीडम? नहीं है। नहीं है। अच्छा, क्यों नहीं है? किस बात के लिए है? बच्चे का नहीं है।
Mummy, when a girl is small, she's small, so she can't go out alone. When she's big, so you don't have the right age to go. So girls not
अब हम बात करते हैं इंडिया और पाकिस्तान की, ठीक है? अब तुमको क्या लगता है, जब भी तुम पाकिस्तान का नाम सुनते तो क्या फील करते हो? क्या?
No, Mummy, all are like we're Pakistani. We are also terrorists, so they don't see us with a good look at.
With good intention. With good intention. तुमको आते हैं कभी कोई कमेंट किया साथ? Many times people have commented.
Like they say that Pakistan is like a separate Islamic, like a place where Muslims live, so you should go there, not in India. India is for the Hindus, so that's what is wrong.
अच्छा.
So, I mean, it's a longer film, it's a fascinating film, and it kind of gives you a sense of what's happening in the city in 2012. And today, of course, I don't need to say this, it's become much more rabid and it's more difficult. The web archive came as more like a pleasant accident. We were having these screenings in the city, and there was a web developer, an American. He was sitting in the audience, and he kind of approached us after the saying that why don't we kind of create it into a digital artifact using these films. And then we had extensive discussion. We didn't have much budget to do this, so he kind of decided, he helped, he said, I'll work with you pro bono, and that's how this came about. And I'll just kind of take you to so this is the way it looks at the moment. I'll click on it and I'll take you to the website itself. Yeah. Can you see? Now, what's the most important thing about this website? It says is a timeline here and the map. So, what's important is that this timeline actually, if you click on any of these dates, say for example 11 December, it actually tells you what happened on that day and where. So the entire city during that period has been mapped here, which is quite an interesting. I mean, it took a little bit of doing, but if we did it. So each one, you can see what happened, and it kind of the entire period of the ethnic violence in the city. Now, why the timeline? Which is, if you were to really look at the syntax of events that happened, we all know that first Babri mosques were demolished on 6th of December, and then there were ethnic violence all across India, and particularly in the city of Mumbai. And then there were, towards the end of it, there was a series of bomb blasts purportedly done by Muslim fundamentalists, and the entire thing stopped. But in the retelling of this history today, which is not very old, 20 years ago, you will see how people are retelling. I just want to play a clip. And of course, the timeline now I showed you is based on Sri Krishna Commission testimonies and citizens' reports. So we kind of map that using what happened on that day. So I'll just go to the rationale I'll play a clip. This is a film made by yet another group of students. It was also telecast. It's called Flashpoint. It kind of looks at bystander memory of this event. What actually people made sense of it. I'll just play it. You will see what is.
So, one thing that I feel has happened after the riots in all these years, and actually starting fairly soon after the riot, is that there's been this whispering campaign and effort to turn history around. Because, what happened was that there were these riots in December and January 92, 93. And in March of 93, there were these bomb blasts. So now people who set off those bombs said, they're retaliation for the riots, which is, I think, completely repulsive to hear that. But now there have been people who've turned that around and trying to say that the riots actually happened after the bomb blast, and of course riots are bad, but they were an understandable reaction to the blasts.
I work on near Nagdevi Street, which is near Muhammad Ali Road. In Muhammad Ali Road and Nagdevi Street, what happens is it's a mixture of Hindus and Muslims that work together during the day, and as shops shutters shut, the work and the business relationships are over, and then it's each one for himself. I was sure that what happened was the riots was a retaliation to the Babri Masjid demolition. But I think so I'm wrong in that statement now. I used to believe it for the past 5-6 years. But I think I've been told that Babri Masjid demolition happened after the riots.
So it's a kind of as if it's kind of a logical conclusion. There were bomb blasts and riots, and then the Babri Masjid demolition. Well, that's the kind. So there is if you can rewrite such a piece of recent history, you can understand. And history has been a big casualty in this whole business, and I don't need to go there, tell you more about it. So what we did was, so this website that the web archive that you saw is actually uses the student film as a spine. So there are the themes that they handle. One is struggle for justice. There are the film that you just saw, Faruq versus the state. Then, of course, dislocation, because there has been a lot of ghettoization and dislocation. You saw the clip from Changing Maps, and then yet another film set in a locality called Mumbai, where it's a Muslim ghetto today, because people kind of actually went away from the main city to this space. Then, of course, the film Flashpoint kind of looks at the kind of hardening of divides and polarization, and of course the stereotype. You saw how this rewriting of history has been done. So this is all these films were available on that website. And then one more film that looked at media representation. How did artists and photographers and filmmakers looked at this event? The last one is on peace initiatives and conflict resolution, set in one of what's the so-called largest slum in Asia, Dharavi, looking at how people have been dealing with conflict resolution and peace. I don't have the time to show you this clip, but you can explore them. So this is the once you the interface there, and I just go to the website again. So now this archive is also devised in terms of the theme that we talked about. So dislocation, struggle for justice, I hope you can see this, and the hardening divides, peace initiative, and media representation. So you can also explore this in various ways. I'll just go back to my... So this kind of contains almost all the resources related to the Mumbai riots here. All the resources, be it research studies, academic reports, newspaper cuttings, every little scrap of paper related to this is here. Yeah, so you see, for example, these are reports, research studies, struggle for justice, hardening divides, media representation, all this, and everything related to this. And what's also significant is that it has interview transcripts. You saw, for example, a clip from Sri Krishna himself. The entire transcript of his interview is here, which you can actually, there's a text file there, you can actually see what he said. And of course, there is a video file as well. So what is some of the things that we were trying to do? I just kind of conclude. One is that it's an attempt to situate. For example, the previous session actually talked about the politics of this digital humanities and how do we need to foreground it. So basically to attempt situate student work in a larger context and to explore ways in which from within the university, the inside, and how can we reach out to the larger and kind of be part of the larger community processes. So that's one idea that we're working with. When you talk about documentary film, it has a very little reach. Very few people see it. As I said, access is very difficult. And so now, and also, there's no much culture of watching a documentary. So here, we could kind of use this particular portal to kind of embed this documentary form and its interaction with other texts. So that was possible. And if you were to look at the way in which today one consumes media artifacts, it's that I'm looking at my telephone and actually watching television, or looking at my computer and reading the newspaper at the same time. So there is this exclusive watching, which is earlier Hallmark, you went into a cinema and watched it. So there are new modes of consumption and also the documentary form begins to interact with other texts, and documentaries have one point of view or multi-point of view, but it's limited in its. So here there are voices which are very many, which kind of then begins to interact. We work with the Creative Commons or copyleft, so all the work that is there is assigned as copyright free and as Creative Commons licensee. And then, of course, this and the other website that we created is to kind of creating different entry points and to looking at events. One of the events that we looked at is Mumbai riots, but other events such as that, which kind of affects all of us. And this is the most important thing, escaping regimes of control. Now, I mean, of course, if you were to look at regimes of control in India, there is, for documentary film, there is pre-censorship, which I have to show you a film. It needs to have a censor certificate, which is for a prerequisite for theatrical release. And of course, you escape that control, you get a censor certificate, which is of course not very easy. Then of course, there is this control of the market where nobody shows your work. And of course, if you get past that, then there is this, what is called vigilante censorship, somebody gets offended. We are a nation of offended sensibility, so to speak. We get offended very easily. So somebody kind of says that I'm offended by it, so you need to pull it down. So there are various gatekeeping that goes on, and we could escape the regimes of control. In fact, we had a very interesting experience with another film that I'll talk to you about it when you. So we've been able to reach. The recent analytics is not available because something wrong with the analytics module, but it is you're looking at 30, 40, 50,000 hits and people seeing this. So it's an important way for us to reach out to larger. And of course, what it also does is facilitate more research. It's a site where used by journalists or various scholars they write back to us that I found this very useful because very little it's like a one-stop solution to kind of spawn more work. You can look at, as it is Creative Commons, you can use the interviews or material there to produce more work related to this. Because we know that the digital divide is a big issue. One is that the access itself, people have no access, but the things are changing at the moment. But of course, limitations of language, most of the material is in English, so it kind of reaches, but therefore the films are important resources. They kind of transcend the barrier of literacy and things like that. So, but And of course, the issue of sustainability. How do we do this? We don't do it with a lot of budgets, nor so we how long can you go on with this? It's not a lot of money that's gone into it. It's a lot of elbow grease is what has actually gone into it, and it's also the enthusiasm of the students who worked on this, which is kind of made it possible. So, and obviously, what we are saying is that it kind of opens up new possibilities for critical pedagogies, and how do you do interventions that are inclusive and also based on social justice. So that's another important aspect that we were trying to achieve. So after that, this was in 2012. Every year we've been working on a new theme. So I'll just quickly run through it because I don't have much. What time? Till what time? Okay. All right. So this is the next one that we did. So this is, if you know much of the wealth of the city and its culture, and it was created by the mills, textile mills. And if you know Mumbai today, so these mills were located, there was a British town, there was a native town, and were located at the edge of the native town. Now, of course, native town and British town have all become the large megapolis, so it is all part, it's right in the middle of the city, and about 600 acres of the land has been actually been taken away. All the mills are shut, and all the ancillary industries that went behind, and the entire population, and the workers never got anything. So it's kind of looking at the contribution of the mills and how its geography and history has been totally erased from the city's consciousness. So this is, it's called millmumbai.eiss.edu, but if you went to the DiverCity website, you will have access to this. The other interesting project that we did was called Cosmopolitan Mumbai, because when you say city, when you say, do you have caste in the city? Invariably the answer is no, we don't have caste in the city. Caste in rural Bihar or Haryana or whatever, but it is not in the city. But the persistence of caste, the caste is a durable inequity. So it's kind of informs every walk of life. So this kind of looks at caste's presence in marriage, language, food, all that. I mean, there is again a set of films, and this website is actually created. And as opposed to the first one that I shared, remembering 1992, these have been used by much less complex technology, and we use WordPress here. And actually one of our students helped us design it, and he was a techie, so he kind of helped design this template, and we keep on working with it. So this is called Cosmopolitan Mumbai. Then the next one that we did was on the idea of waste. Who generates waste, and what is thought of as waste? What is kind of, who produces waste and who kind of processes it? And the vector, the intersectionality between waste, caste, and gender, and all that is something that it looks at. Next, Street Mumbai, looking at right and access, looking at even hawkers, women's right, and various kind of aspects related to street. And this is the last one that we did, looking at the idea of migration, because migrants are demonized all over the world. Nobody wants migrants, but migrants are essential to the city's wealth. They kind of do all the jobs that the more affluent ones do not do. So this is looking at, and currently as we speak, we are working on a series on gender and urban transformation, looking at grassroots women leaders, and in a few months, hopefully, we will have another archive ready. So we kind of, what we are trying to do is to create this whole set of archive which kind of bear witness to the kind of process of exclusion that's happening in the city. And after 10 years down the line, we might have a very rich body of work that kind of exclusively driven by the work of the students. That's the idea. Can I play another clip, which is, right? Okay, this is again from the Changing Maps. This is the last.
It's a fact that he was denied a job because of being a Muslim by a very famous newspaper in Mumbai. He was a fresh journalist. He had done a diploma in journalism, and it was just a shock to us. My brother just got the answer that the management is not very keen to employ any Muslim in their company. अभी पिछले हफ्ते की बात है, हमें घर देखने गए थे तो हमसे कहा गया है वो एक हिंदू फैमिली का घर है और वो हिंदू फैमिली एक हिंदू फैमिली को ही बेचना चाहता है.
आपके हिसाब से कितने गॉड्स हैं?
अनलिमिटेड.
अनलिमिटेड
नहीं 365.
एक ही गॉड मतलब सबका.
क्रिश्चियंस जीसस को मानते हैं, मुसलमान अल्लाह को मानते हैं, हिंदू हनुमान गणेश ऐसे अपने भगवान को मानते हैं.
मेरे ख्याल से ये पूरे दुनिया में 10,000 या 1,000 के ऊपर गॉड है कि ये पूरे वर्ल्ड में रिलीजन भी इतने सारे हो तो गॉड भी बहुत सारे हो गए.
Aurangzeb became the emperor in AD 1658. At this time, the Mughal Empire extended from Kashmir in the north, of Ahmednagar in the south, and from Kabul in the west to Bengal in the east.
मतलब almost
Full India.
India, yes. East maybe or south maybe or north maybe.
After Shivaji Maharaj, Sambhaji Maharaj became the Chhatrapati. At this time, the Marathas were struggling against the Mughals.
बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट रोल प्ले करती है. चूँकि औरंगज़ेब बदमाश था, औरंगज़ेब जालिम था, तो इसलिए सारे मुसलमान बदमाश हैं, सारे मुसलमान ऐसे ही होते हैं. शिवाजी एक हिंदू किंग था तो उसके बारे में एक अच्छी तस्वीर बन जाती है. तो बचपन से ही बच्चों को ये औरंगज़ेब एक कहानी की तरह पढ़ाया जाना चाहिए, ऐसे नहीं कि किसी के दिल में नफ़रत पैदा करे. और मैं जानती हूँ जब मैं स्कूल में थी, मैं एक अकेली ही मुसलमान लड़की थी और जब औरंगज़ेब के बारे में पढ़ाया जा रहा था ऐसा मुझे लगा जैसे सारी आंखें मुझे देख रही हैं, सब मुझे ही देख रहे हैं. I think teachers have to be very responsible because history जैसे पढ़ाते हैं तो बच्चों के दिल में नफ़रत नहीं बैठनी चाहिए. बच्चों को हमें ऐसे बताना चाहिए कि औरंगज़ेब एक बादशाह था, शिवाजी एक बादशाह था और ना कि एक मुसलमान और एक हिंदू की लड़ाई. जो इतिहास है वो एक इतिहास है.
तो आपके हिसाब से कौन सा बेस्ट किंग होगा वो हिस्ट्री बुक्स में से?
हिस्ट्री बुक में से अकबर, बिरबल. एक्चुअली वो जितने भी मुसलमान किंग्स हैं ना उन लोग के बारे में मतलब इतना लोग लूटते थे, लोग जुल्म करते थे, तो हिस्ट्री में बहुत नफरत है मुसलमानों के खिलाफ. औरंगज़ेब पूरे महाराष्ट्र को या पूरे इंडिया को करता था, लेकिन उसके थोड़े दिन बाद शिवाजी ने उसको डिफीट कर दिया.
मुझे शिवाजी अच्छा लगते हैं. और जितने भी हिंदू किंग्स बताए उन लोगों को ज़्यादा ऐसा है कि दे वर मतलब वेरी गुड, दे यूज्ड टू हेल्प पीपल. बट ज़्यादातर मुस्लिम किंग्स बताया दे वर वेरी क्रूअल.
और शिवाजी ने भी पूरे महाराष्ट्र को एक मस्त अच्छा मैसेज भी दिया था.
और मतलब उन लोग मतलब ये बारे में भी झगड़ा करते थे कि मुसलमान और हिंदू में उन लोग झगड़ा करते थे, ये उन लोग को नहीं करना चाहिए था.
So, yeah. And if I went back to the website, there are various ways of, I don't have the time to various ways of navigating. Actually, you can only look at the film, look at the reports. You need to explore it. So thank you so much. I hope I have not exceeded my time. Yeah.